Hi guys, this is Matthew from BabyFat, back with another Photoshop tutorial. As it's currently Pride Month, I thought it'd be cool to do a Pride themed composition, so I'm going to show you the steps to create this cool flowing rainbow effect. As always, all images that I use will be linked in the description so you can follow along. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to keep up to date on new tutorials. With all that said and done, let's get started.
Here we go.
Okay, so let's get started. Let's create a new blank image. I'm going to go with landscape 4x6 like I did in my last tutorial. Feel free to choose what you want though. And the first thing that we're going to do is bring in our background. So now we're going to build up our rainbow using the rectangle tool. And we're going to build this up in sections. Choose our first rectangle. We're going to convert that to a smart object. And we're going to apply a colour to the rectangle so we can see it, which we'll just use a nice simple gradient for now. It'll ask us to rasterize a layer. There we go. And if we save that, there's our rectangle shape. Now we're going to take a copy of this just so we can reuse it again later once we've made changes. So we'll just rename that to copy rainbow. And let's start warping this to create our shape. So we'll enter transform, right click and warp. And we're going to start moving these points to create our rainbow shape. Now we're going to curve here, so we want to bring up this point to create quite a high curve angle. You can pull those to straighten out the edge. Just adjust these. Let's zoom in a bit so we can see what we're doing. A bit more. Let's just move these over. Okay, and you can use this top angle, which normally sits on the top, to adjust that curve, a bit like using paths. Okay, so that's our first piece of rainbow done. That doesn't look like much at the moment, but it will get better. So what I'm going to duplicate this rainbow. And we're now going to start building this next part of the curve. These two angles, here and here, try to keep those the same, and that'll ensure that your curve at the edge of the rainbow looks the same at the top and bottom. If you have one that's off, then you'll get a strange curve line. So just try to keep those two the same at each point, and you should end up with a really nice curve on that rainbow. Now this is going to take a while to do, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to speed up the video, give you some nice music to listen to while I do it, and come back once we have a rainbow. Okay, so now we've got our rainbow shape. We're now going to make it look a bit more like a rainbow. So we're going to open one of these smart objects, and we've got our original rainbow design here. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop in our rainbow colours, expand this slightly, and stretch it out. And save. And just like that, we now have a rainbow. You can see it's showing up a little area here where our lines have gone over slightly. So what we're going to do, zoom in here. And let's just adjust the warp bounds on that edge. That looks okay. Just adjust the angle slightly. And there we go. Let's zoom out again. Okay, so now at this point, what we're going to do, we're going to take all of these rainbow objects and we're going to group them and call it rainbow. And we're going to convert that to a smart object. And then we're going to duplicate one, which we're going to use a bit later on to create the rainbow reflection on the ground. Because we've got to do this slightly differently than the normal reflection. Because we've got to take into account of 3D depth. As our rainbow starts here at the front on the ground and travels backwards behind this pillar. So we can't just do a straight inverted reflection. We've got to follow the path, but we do have to invert the colours. And by having these two layers, we can adjust the colour of the rainbow in the reflection and flip it upside down while still maintaining that same shape. Okay, so let's just hide our reflection for now. And just move that down here. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to hide the parts of the rainbow that are going to appear behind these pillars. So the way we do that is by using what's called a layer mask. And we click this little button down here, which adds a layer mask. Now the way a mask works is white areas show parts of the image and black areas hide parts of the image. So what we want to do is paint onto this layer mask with black the areas that we don't want to see. So as you can see, as I start painting, that rainbow disappears. And if I take too much away, I can swap to white and paint it back in. So let's just clean these lines up. Shrink this down a bit and just swap back to black. And we'll do the same on the other side. And there we go. Nicely hidden behind. Now that we've masked the posts, we're going to add some curves, adjustment layers, just so we can bring in a bit of shadows and a bit of highlights, and to give it a bit more of that realism in the environment. So we'll start off by adding our first curve adjustment layer, which we will call shadows. And we'll bring down the light areas. Now the way curves works is the right hand side is how much light is in the light areas. The left hand side is how much light is in the dark areas. And this left-hand side of the graph shows how much light is being applied. So if we bring down the light in the light areas, we can see we can darken this rainbow. Now we only want the curve adjustment layer to affect parts of the rainbow that we choose. So going back to what we did before with the pillars, we can add a mask clip by clicking on this icon here. Now it only affects the rainbow. Now if we invert that by pressing Control-Shift-I or Control-I or Command-I if you're on the Mac, we can then paint in white on our mask to show the colour adjustment areas that we're interested in. So we can paint back on here just to darken this area and a bit in here. We add some shadow here and here, and again a bit in here. And that just gives a bit more of that depth. Soften that edge a bit there. Okay, and we'll do the same thing again, but this time we'll bring out some highlights. So let's create another curves adjustment layer. This time increase the light areas to put a bit more brightness. Make that, add a clipping mask and invert. And we'll paint on in white some areas that want a bit of extra light, such as the ends of the rainbows here and at the edges of these curves. Drop a little bit on the top here just to account for these lights coming from the top. And don't forget, if you add too much, you can always swap to black and just paint some of those away. Okay. Okay, so next thing I want to do is bring some transparency into our rainbow. So we want areas like here to have a bit of transparency in the dark areas and in the middle, because that's where our guy's going to be stood. But we want to keep these areas quite opaque. So what we're going to do is, first of all, let's just clean up these curves here, because we've got too many. So we'll just select the rainbow, invert, select the curves layer, and hit delete. There we go. That'll just clean up those where I went a bit too far on the edges. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to group these layers and add a layer mask to that group. And what this is going to allow us to do is, if we use a gradient tool with black and white, you'll see that what happens is, as we paint, the white areas are nice and visible and the black areas disappear. Now we could go and use a brush and paint all those out, but what I'm going to use is this gradient here, and we're going to adjust the colour stops to match up with our rainbow. So if we expand that out a bit, now we want this area to be visible, so white, and we want a bit of transparency here in the middle. So what we're going to do is we're going to set that colour to be a little bit of grey. Here we want nice bold white. Here we want a bit of transparency. So change this colour, bit of transparency. We want nice bold white here. We want this area to be quite transparent. we want it to be nice and bright at the end again. Give it that one. Okay, and now if we say okay, now if we paint that gradient over the top, hold shift to keep that straight. You can see the bright areas have stayed and the dark areas have gone transparent. And because we've done that as a gradient on a layer mask, we can always go back and change this gradient later. And say we might want this area to be a little bit darker. And bring this brightness over a bit, so we only get it there. Same with this side. Make that a little bit darker. Bring this light over. Want a little bit more transparency in the middle here. Okay, let's see how that looks. Perfect. Okay, so our next step is going to be to bring in some rainbow reflections onto this wall here and onto this wall here. And we're going to do that using this copy rainbow that we took at the beginning. So we'll duplicate that and bring it to just below the rainbow. And we'll bring that across to here. Rotate that, and then we'll just warp it just to match a bit of the shape here. We don't have to be too precise here because we're going to blur this out anyway. Okay, that should do. Maybe rotate it a bit more. Okay, and now we're going to apply a layer mask. Invert that. And using a low flow brush, we're going to slowly paint back in onto this mask the areas where we want that reflection. So we've got to paint in very, very gently here. And around here. And that looks really nice. Okay, and now we're going to do the same thing again, but for the other side. So again, take another copy. Bring that up. And let's just scale this to size. And give it a bit of a warp. Again, don't worry about being too neat. That'll do. Apply a layer mask, invert, and paint back in white the areas that we want. And then we'll apply Gaussian blur to these layers, so we've not got that harsh, sharp reflection. So Gaussian blur. And there we go. We'll apply the same to the other side, which we can just quickly apply from the filters menu. And there we go. Might look nice if we had a bit of a blending layer. A bit of a hard light. And that looks nice. Okay, so our next step is to add the rainbow reflection to the ground. And we'll do that using our rainbow copy. So if we bring that in and move it below, you'll notice the first thing that's wrong is the colours on the rainbow aren't mirrored. So if we open up the Smart Object, go into any of these, and simply flip the image upside down, and save it. And you'll see we now have our inverted colours. So what we'll do is we'll add that Gaussian blur effect to here, just so we've not got a really sharp reflection from the light. bring that down slightly. And we're going to mask in the areas that we want. So create a mask, invert, and paint in white with a low flow again, the areas where we want reflection. So use a slightly larger brush. And just like that, we can bring in our reflection. Yeah. Let me drop the opacity slightly. If we go a bit too bright, we can just swap to black. Just fade that out slightly. And there we go. There's our reflection, nice and quick. Okay, so our next step is to bring in our guy who's got to stand behind our rainbow. So let's bring in the image, and we're going to use the select and mask tool to filter him out. So you select a mask, and we're going to use select subject to work out the main area of the image automatically. Now we swap to view mode to on black. We can see what's been selected so far. So I'm going to swap to the minus brush tool and just clean up these edges a bit. Now I'm not taking too much time about this, but you might want to take a bit more time just to get those neater edges. And we can use decontaminate colours just to overflow those edges slightly with the colour of the pixels next to it. Just gives a bit of a cleaner edge, nice and easy. And okay. And there we go. That's nicely masked, really, really quick. And let's shrink him down and position him where we want him. That looks good. Now we've got our guy in, the next thing we need to do is to adjust the light levels on this person to bring him more into the same tone as the background. So we'll do that using a curves adjustment layer. So we'll create a curves, and we now need to just adjust these values. We'll clip it to the guy so we only affect him, so that he matches the background lighting a bit more. Yeah, that looks quite nice. And then we'll add another curves adjustment layer so we can match the colour tones a bit more evenly. So what we can do to do this is, with this another curves adjustment layer, which we'll clip to our guy, we have these three eye pickers. Now this top eye picker chooses the black colour, the middle one chooses the grey point, and the bottom eye picker chooses the white point. So what we want is we want the whites in this part of the image to match the same colour whites as this part of the image. And to do that, all we do is we click on a white spot, and then for the greys we choose medium grey. And for the dark points, we choose a dark value. And then we can just adjust these, like the lightness again slightly. And that just gives us a better colour balance between the image and the background. There you go, that looks really nice. So we'll now drop him behind the rainbow, preferably without shoving the mask on him, which doesn't help. And now what we need to do now is bring in some lighting from the environment. So we know we've got some top lights, so we want to add some light along the top. So again, got a duplicate layer there. We'll create another curves adjustment layer. And we'll increase the brightness on the top. Take out some of the reds and the greens, as our lights are a bit blue. PC, that's that slightly. Now what we'll do is we will invert the mask on here, and we'll paint back in just the light areas that we want, which are going to be along the top here. So shrink our brush down, and using, again, a very low flow, we'll just paint in where we want some of these highlights along the top to be. I could just increase that a bit. There we go. Add a colour dodge just so it blends the colours a bit nicer. And that's looking really good. Now there's only two more things that we need to do, which is to add the rainbow light reflection to the guy's clothes and to give him some shadow. So let's take our rainbow, let's duplicate this and pop it just in front of our guy. Raise it up slightly. Give it a nice Gaussian blur. And adjust the transparency. And as we're using it in the same mask, we don't have to worry about trimming those edges. Give it a nice overlay. And that was really, really quick to do. The final step is to give some shadow underneath him. So we'll start by drawing a nice big black circle down here. A nice little dab. Does it flow? Turn the flow to 100 so we can actually paint it. And then we can just adjust that. Okay, so we'll add a colour overlay to the shadow, just so we can match the shadows of the ground a bit more. And then we'll just mask it, just so we can give it a bit more of a defined edge. So it's black. Drop that hardness really low, and drop the flow down. Let's just soften out these edges a bit. And there we go, that's pretty much our image done. Okay, so now we're at this point, we're going to add a glow to this rainbow, just to give it a bit of a nice light glowing effect. And we'll do that really easily by duplicating the rainbow. We'll convert that to a smart object, select it, create a layer mask, and invert that layer. And what that's going to do is when we add the glow effect, it's only going to apply to the outside of the rainbow. And we'll do that using a Gaussian blur. So select our image, filter, Gaussian blur. And we'll give that a nice glow. And you can see It just has that nice subtle glow to the outside. And now the final thing that we need to do is add a colour lookup table, just to bring all those different elements together and make them feel all part of the same composition. Now we don't want to apply it to the rainbow because we want to keep the popping colours from that rainbow. So what we'll add a colour adjustment layer, colour lookup layer, and pop that just below everything to do with the rainbow. And we'll apply to it, let's have a look, see which one looks really nice. Crisp winter looks really nice. Fall colours also looks really nice. So look at foggy night. Foggy night looks really nice. If you drop the filter about 25%, gives you that nice dusky look, which really allows it to contrast really well with this rainbow. And that is it, we're done. That is our final image. Anyway, I hope this tutorial's helped, and if it has, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more tutorials. Share in the comments compositions that you've worked on, and I'll show them off in the future tutorial at the start. Thanks again, and see you next time.